Today we're exploring one of the biggest questions that we can ask, and that is, what is the origin of the universe? In apologetic circles, this is also called the cosmological argument, and it's a particularly meaningful argument to me because it's one of the first reasons that I started rethinking my formerly atheist worldview. So if you're a regular here, you might be thinking, didn't we cover this already about a year ago? And the answer is that yes, we did, but I have better audio now, so you're gonna, from time to time, see me redo some of my older content. Okay, so when it comes to the origin of the universe, we have three different options, three basic options anyhow. One is that the universe has always existed. Two is that the universe began to exist without a cause beyond itself. And three, that the universe began to exist and was caused by something outside of itself. So now let's look at those three options one at a time. Our first option is that the universe has always existed. So for most of the 19th and 20th centuries, the dominant view among cosmologists has been that the universe was eternal and static, meaning that they believed that the universe was not expanding or contracting overall. It remained in the static state. And in his 1928 book, The Nature of the Physical World, astronomer and physicist Sir Arthur Eddington, he wrote that, philosophically, the notion of a beginning of the present order of nature is repugnant to me. That mindset began to change in 1929 when Edwin Hubble published evidence showing that the light from distant galaxies is redshifted, and that the further away a galaxy is, the more its light is redshifted. In case this term's new to you, redshift means that light's waves are stretched to longer wavelengths, and that kind of stretching happens when something is moving away from us. You can think of it a bit like a siren's pitch dropping as an ambulance drives away. So with sound, the waves stretch as the pitch lowers, and with light, the waves stretch and the wavelength lengthens. In both cases, this stretch tells you that the source is moving away. So when scientists looked at this pattern of redshift using Einstein's equations, which allowed space itself to stretch, they realized that redshift wasn't just, showing galaxies moving through space, but rather that space itself was expanding. And if the universe is expanding now, then if we run that expansion backwards, it points to a time when the universe was much smaller and denser, which implies a finite past and ultimately a beginning. And this is because you can't keep shrinking a physical universe forever while the expansion rate remains positive. So if you trace it backwards, it leads to a boundary where space and time and matter reach a limit rather than extending infinitely into the past. Or to put it another way, there's a clear starting line for space and time and matter themselves, and everything that exists comes after that starting point. So this is why most cosmologists today believe that the universe had a beginning, often referred to as the Big Bang. So our first possibility that the universe is eternal is no longer a supported view. So let's consider the first of our remaining possibilities, that the universe began to exist without a cause beyond itself, or in other words, that it simply began. There was nothing outside of it that caused it to begin, caused it to exist. So one of the most well-known defenders of this view was the late Stephen Hawking. In his book, The Grand Design, he wrote, "Spontaneous creation is the reason there is something rather than nothing, why the universe exists, why we exist." And what Hawking meant by this was not that the universe appeared for no reason at all, but rather that the universe didn't need a cause outside of itself because the laws of physics are sufficient to explain its beginning. As he put it, because there is a law such as gravity, the universe can and will create itself from nothing. Some people also appeal to quantum physics in support of this conclusion. In experiments, there have been tiny particles that appear and disappear in ways that seem uncaused. And this has led some people to speculate that if uncaused events can occur within the universe, then perhaps the universe itself could have come into existence without causes like these particles. But these ideas have some problems. So first, if space and time themselves had a beginning, then there was no physical reality before the universe existed. And if there was no physical reality that was there before the universe existed, then there were no physical laws in place to do any explanatory work. Because even if physical laws or mathematical descriptions do exist in some kind of abstract sense, they don't cause anything to happen, right? They describe how reality behaves once it already exists, but they don't bring reality into existence. True nothingness has no properties, it has no power, it has no potential. Nothing cannot create something. Hugh Ross says, "The universe of matter, energy, space, and time is, in itself, an effect. Every effect is generated by a cause. Absolute nothingness, the complete lack of anything and everything, cannot be a cause or causal agent. That is ruled out by definition and also by observation. If absolute nothingness could spontaneously produce something, scientists would see new somethings arising everywhere. Instead, they see the consistent operation of the first law of thermodynamics, which says the total amount of matter and energy within the universe can neither be increased nor decreased." And the same point applies to quantum physics. So the particles that appear and disappear in ways that seem uncaused, they're not occurring in literal nothingness. They're occurring within an existing physical framework, one with energy and fields and mathematical structure that is already in place. Or in other words, they come from a kind of something, not from nothing in the true sense that applies to the universe's beginning. So William Lane Craig, he wrote, "Even on the traditional interdeterministic interpretations, particles do not come into being out of nothing. They arise as spontaneous fluctuations of the energy contained in the subatomic vacuum, which constitutes an indeterministic cause of their origination. The same point can be made about theories of the origin of the universe out of a primordial vacuum. Popular magazine articles touting such theories as getting something from nothing simply do not understand that the vacuum is not nothing, but is a sea of fluctuating energy, endowed with a rich structure and subject to physical laws. Such models do not therefore involve a true origination ex nihilo." The term ex nihilo just means out of nothing. So this brings us to a basic point, that in every ordinary case that we are familiar with, things that begin to exist don't cause themselves, they are caused by something else. True nothing, true ex nihilo, never creates something. Whether it's people or plants or stars or books, whenever there's a beginning, there's a cause outside of that thing itself. So while the idea that the universe began without a cause outside of itself is an option, it does require treating the universe as an exception to how we understand everything else, and it relies on an explanation that assumes some kind of physical and mathematical framework rather than true nothingness. This brings us to our final option, that the universe began to exist and was caused by something beyond itself. Or in other words, that something outside of the universe made the universe begin. So that shifts the question to what is that something? And one of the explanations that comes up is that the universe came from a primeval soup of sorts. And this is the idea that complex things like life arose from simpler chemical and biological processes over time. But this explanation does assume a universe with matter and energy and physical laws already in place. So it can address how complexity developed within the universe, but it does not explain why the universe started to exist in the first place, how there was nothing and then something. So a second explanation is the multiverse, the idea that our universe is just one of many and that its life-permitting conditions can be explained by sheer numbers, that if enough universes exist, one like ours was bound to appear. But currently there's no direct evidence for this. There's no direct evidence for the existence of other universes. And even if the multiverse was a thing, it raises the question of why larger systems exist in the first place. So there's more to say here, but I'm going to return to this topic in a future dedicated video. So then a third explanation involves aliens. In an interview, Richard Dawkins admitted that nobody actually knows how the universe got started, but then he speculated that it could be that at some earlier time, somewhere in the universe, a civilization evolved by probably some kind of Darwinian means to a very, very high level of technology and designed a form of life that they seeded onto perhaps this planet. Now that is a possibility and an intriguing possibility. But again, there's no evidence for this, and Dawkins himself admitted that if it were true, you'd still have to explain where that alien civilization came from. So then finally, there's the theistic explanation that the cause of the universe's beginning is God. And the argument is that because space, time, matter, and energy all began when the universe began, then the cause of the universe's beginning cannot depend on any of those things. Or to put it another way, the cause of the universe would have to be timeless, because time began with the universe, that it would need to be non-spatial because space began with the universe. It'd need to be immaterial or non-physical because matter and energy began with the universe. And it would need to be powerful enough to bring the universe into existence. William Lane Craig, he continued this idea by writing, "Now there are only two sorts of things that could fit that description, either an abstract object, like a number, or else an unembodied mind. But abstract objects can't cause anything. That's part of what it means to be abstract. The number 7, for example, can't cause any effects. So the cause of the existence of the universe must be a transcendent mind, which is what believers understand God to be." Theists also highlight that impersonal things like physical forces or laws act automatically. So if they exist at all, they produce their effects right away. A personal cause, by contrast, can choose when to act, which helps explain why the universe began at a specific point in the past rather than existing forever. Okay, so a reasonable question that often comes up here is, okay, well then, who made God? But remember, if the cause of the universe is timeless, because time itself began with the universe, then it would not have a beginning. Only things with a beginning need a cause. We covered this more in another video too, so you're welcome to check that out. I'll wrap up with this. No matter where you land on this question, there isn't absolute proof in the strict sense, which can be a little bit uncomfortable. Every position involves some degree of trust or commitment beyond what can be demonstrated directly, but just take heart that that commitment doesn't have to be blind. It can be informed by reason and evidence and careful thinking. Personally, I think that the theistic explanation best fits the evidence, but in the comments, I would love to know which explanation you find most convincing and why. I'm also curious how comfortable you are with the idea that every worldview involves some level of trust beyond what can be proven. Of course, if you have questions about this topic or other topics related to Christianity, please put those in the comments and I'll do my best to respond there or in a future video. And if you want to see more content like this, you can click the subscribe button somewhere below this video and I'll see you next week. Thanks.